What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Gooner channel. And well, today I want to touch on something that started to occur to me after watching yesterday's 1-1 draw between Brighton and Manchester City. And it's not the fact that, if only we'd beaten Nottingham Forest, if only we hadn't thrown the title away with that defeat to Brighton, then this is a kind of game that might have given us hope going into the last game of the season. It's none of that. Manchester City are champions. We've all made our peace with that, I'm sure. It was, and I want to give a massive shout out to Football Dad's Army because he's obviously thinking the same way I am. And his video earlier today was about people criticising the Brighton players in the dressing room and the fans for celebrating the way that they did. Now, I want to say straight off the bat, Brighton is a team very close to my heart. I've sort of married into a Brighton family. And, it's been a running joke in a family. Will they go down every season? And then last year, top half of the table, and this season, the first time ever, they're in Europe. So seems like a weird thing to be critical of them celebrating, and they were celebrating. And watching Tony Bloom and Roberto De Zerbi leaving the pitch after their interviews, arm in arm like a young couple in love on Valentine's Day. We know people who were at the game. Atmosphere was absolutely fantastic, and what a beautiful goal by Julio Enciso as well to level the match. Just a really good feel-good moment for a club which has done things very much the right way and sort of miraculously in terms of business. This is a club who earlier this season, having sold some key players over the last 2 years, lost their manager to Moneybags Chelsea, just came and scooped him up and offered him £50 million right before, Brighton had a chance to push on. And I remember commiserating with members of my family saying, look, sorry, this is going to be tough for you. And I'll be the first to say I'd never heard of Roberto De Zerbi. And they get a bit of good fortune because of Shakhtar Donetsk not being able to play. And he comes in and adds to a well-organised family kind of atmosphere, this flair, belief, creativity, incisive football. And they can mix it up as well, like they showed against us. Now, this is a remarkable achievement for a club their size. But they also, when you start to think that Dan Ashworth, their sporting director, left to go to Newcastle, they had another person snapped up. This is a team who have sold £203 million worth of their talent since 2021 and spent only £47 million. And in that period of time, they have improved. So a selling club which consistently improves. Just have a look at what they've done. They bought Marc Cucurella for £15 million. A year later sold him to Chelsea for £63 million. Replaced him with Pervis Estupiñán, for whom they spent £15 million. And I think if Cucurella's worth 63, Estupiñán easily is. They bought Julio Enciso for £9.5 million. My money, he is the bright one to watch at Brighton. I loved Trossard there, and we signed him, and we've seen what a great player he can be in the Premier League. Moises Caicedo. Now, as Arsenal fans, we know very well just how good this player is. And apart from roughing up Martinelli in the game, which kind of has shades of Kolo Touré about it, and I think, no quarter asked, none given. He is an outstanding player. They spent £4.5 million on him. And Mitoma, who they spent £2.7 million on. And if nothing else, if his end product is not quite there yet, bear in mind he's £2.7 million playing in the Premier League. And the players that have left, Ben White, Yves Bissouma, poor Yves Bissouma. Rumour was that he was a gooner and he ended up at Tottenham. That's already bad, but when you think just how bad they've been playing, and Neil Maupay similarly, one of, I think he's Brighton's second top goal scorer of all time, goes off to Everton, scores 1 goal this season. That's Richarlison bad, can you imagine? Dan Burn to Newcastle. These are players that have gone out that have recouped for Brighton £203 million. And this summer, when you consider that they're almost certainly going to be selling Moises Caicedo. David Weir, who came in after Dan Ashworth left for Newcastle and is now director there, he was talking about how the timing wasn't right for Moises Caicedo to leave in January because they had ambitions to push for Europe. That's been achieved now, and there was more than a hint or suggestion in his voice that Moises Caicedo will be leaving this summer. Now, if just Caicedo and McAllister leave, McAllister, I think, is almost certain to go to Liverpool as part of their Liverpool rebuilding process, and what a player they're getting, a World Cup winner. Brighton signed those two players for a princely sum of £12.5 million. They're almost definitely going to recoup £160 million for that. And they've qualified for Europe, so they can start to attract players like that. And there were a couple of players in there, Buonanotte and Ferguson, who... There's a really bright future for Brighton. And I think that's why they're celebrating. They're celebrating because if you're a Brighton fan, you have been going to football and you've never seen your team win anything. But you've loyally been going and you've kept the faith and you've watched your team intelligently invest, go through adversity and come out the other side of it more focused and more together than ever. And watching McAllister do effectively his lap of honour and his goodbye to those fans, and hearing him talk about Brighton after the Arsenal game, it's clear that there is a lot of love and a great spirit there, and the team really have got behind De Zerbi and what he's doing. Now, personally, I'm not yet convinced by De Zerbi, but what do I know? But in any case, yes, this is why the Brighton fans are celebrating. Newcastle, also a team I have a lot of time for. Spent quite a bit of time in Newcastle, and the people up there are wonderful, and they similarly have had very little to celebrate, let's be honest. And this season, you know, it looked like they were going to win their first piece of silverware in a lifetime and didn't. And well done, Man United, for winning something. But of course their fans are going to celebrate. It's normal. I think actually if by some miracle of last day results, Tottenham are able to get that Conference League, I wouldn't blame their fans for cheering either. I mean, they have nothing else to cheer. This idea that you should only celebrate an actual silverware trophy is just nonsense. There's only two English teams likely to be... Well, there are only two English teams that are going to celebrate any silverware this year in the highest level. With Man City winning the Premier League and Man United winning the League Cup and both of them contesting the FA Cup, that leaves very little for the rest of us to celebrate. Should we walk around in mourning? There is this kind of attitude amongst a cabal of Arsenal fans, which drives me absolutely mad. I'm sure it's the same in other clubs as well. And there are people out there who say, you know, it's a disgrace. I heard this phrase a number of times when we... Let me backtrack a little bit. Look, the Arsenal players, backroom staff, and particularly Mikel Arteta know how close they came this season to pulling off what would have been a sensational victory over a fantastically well-run team. Arguably the best team in the world right now. Arguably the greatest Premier League side of all time. And this isn't about Man City's use of financial fair play and regulations. They won it on the pitch. And if by some miracle the title is stripped from them and given to us, it still won't feel like we won it. Unless, of course, there's bribery, and there's no suggestion of that. Look, this Man City team, managed by arguably the best manager in the world, has achieved a type of character through belief, through the shared vision of success that they've all bought into and all worked really hard for. And we are way behind that at this point, but it's a process of development. Arteta's first job, he will have learned huge things. This summer, Arsenal are going to see a massive redesigning of our team, which, you know, is hard to get right. But I think that the evidence of the last few seasons is that Arsenal know exactly the type of players they want and they're prepared to spend this summer to get them. Whether we can get quite enough to match Man City at this time is difficult to say, even if we went and got Cancelo and Gundogan from them. Man City are unquestionably the best team in the league. For Arsenal to have come as close as we have and to have our fans saying, you know, it's not good enough. I heard this phrase over and over again, unacceptable. I want you to think what you think you're saying when you tell a group of people you've probably never met before who've worked as hard as they possibly could to achieve something and then seen it disappear because they couldn't just cross that line ahead of a hugely talented, well-drilled, put together with unlimited resources and the greatest backroom staff, anything they could possibly want. We came second to them, and you tell them it's not acceptable. What does that mean? Who are you to say what you will and won't accept? Being a fan of a football club is not something that gives you the right to tell them what they should be doing. There's one manager at Arsenal. He decides the team. You can agree with him or disagree with him. Was ever thus. I did not always agree with George Graham's selections. I thought he should play Merson, wouldn't he? There's only years later I found out that he couldn't always play Merson. You know, Arsene Wenger. As much as I loved Arsene Wenger, you can't get away from the fact that fans at the end all knew more than Arsene did. Emery era was not a high point for any of us, but look at Emery's success at Villa now. Has people scratching their heads thinking maybe we were a bit premature with Unai Emery? I don't think we were. We have the manager that we need right now. It is a process, and when you have all these people saying, winners don't celebrate coming second, I think that's nonsense. I think winners do know that this is a hard journey, that going from being a team that finished 8th twice to winning a Premier League is not all just going to happen like that because you want it to, and it's not acceptable, and we threw away this and we threw away that, and we're bottlers. We've bottled nothing this season. We're ahead of where we expected to be, but there is still work to be done. It's like walking into a kitchen halfway through somebody cooking you a meal and saying, this isn't good enough yet. All right, it's not good enough yet, but you don't get to say it's acceptable till you put the work in. And none of these people going about, we shouldn't be celebrating second place. I hope that the home game against Wolves is a party atmosphere. And I believe it will be. The Arsenal fans have been a big part of the success. All of us, all around the world, have been a part of this success by being positive, upbeat, happy and encouraging. It was gutting to see so many people filing out of the Brighton game. It was devastating, really, because you fear for these young players. Bukayo Saka, who's given everything and just come up short. Not because he couldn't be bothered, but because it's hard to understand what that pressure does to you till you've been there. But now he does. Now they do. Our team now know what it's like to come so close, and they presumably will know what is required of them to get a little bit further. And Arteta most definitely will. Arteta has been outstanding as a manager for us, and this season has been a high point. Coming second to that City team deserves celebration. Do I think we should be jumping up and down? It's probably just not our style. But I hope the fans are bouncing. I hope the Emirates is bouncing. I hope it's as full of song and joy as it ever has been. And I hope that everybody realises that we're privileged to be where we are. So well done Newcastle. Well done Man United. Well done Brighton. Well done all the teams that exceeded what was expected of them. Well done Arsenal, the players. Saliba, hurry up and sign your contract, by the way. Anyway, to the question, should Arsenal celebrate like Newcastle did and Brighton did, the achievement of this season? Should we see scenes in the dressing room of them dancing around? I would say yes. You may say no, and if you do, let's hear about it in the comments. Surely you have some comments on this if you've watched this far. A massive thank you, and don't forget to hit subscribe. Anyway, that's enough from me. Until I see you again, be lucky. Lots of love.